Okay, let's get started. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's fall virtual talk sponsored by the Lane County Master Gardeners. My name is Jan, and I will be your host. During the next 2 hours, we will hear about plant design theory, 20 stunning plants for your low maintenance garden, and mulching for more low maintenance garden. Before we get started, a couple of items. Closed caption is enabled and can be turned on or off with the CC button at the bottom of your screen. During the session, everyone will be muted. There'll be time for questions at the end of the talk. To ask questions, please type them into the Q&A box and we will answer as many questions as we can during the time allotted. If you have additional questions, please contact your local extension office. So let's get started by introducing our first speaker. Our first hour's topic, planting design theory, has Rebecca Shepard as our speaker. Rebecca is a landscape designer for GreenWorks, a landscape architecture firm, and a longtime master gardener for OSU. She has worked for many residential designs, from single-family homes to large-scale residential housing. Rebecca loves to design with nature and to engage people with the environment through weaving outdoor experiences with educational elements. She thrives at the challenge of reclaiming habitats for fish and wildlife by working with plants to reimagine the beauty and functionality of stormwater management. Rebecca holds a bachelor's and master's in landscape architecture from the U of O. Please welcome Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. Thanks to meet you all virtually. This is kind of exciting to be on this talk. A little bit about myself first. So I was always an indoor child. Like, I did not want to be out in the garden at all. And probably like my mom, who might be listening to this, I have to be a little careful, but she used to mow the garden after school, like on my route to school, in her leopard skin bikini and gumboots, like gardening boots. And it was one of the most terrifying things. When I would come home from school, I would take the back route home because she would be out there. All my friends would see her and like say hi, and like super embarrassing. So maybe that is why I started being like I'm not going to go hang outside. Anyways, that was the beginning of my journey into not really being outside too much as a young child. And so as I got older, I didn't have very much interest in plants. And after I got married, my friend gave me a bouquet of tulips. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing thing. And I was like, where are these from? What are these? And so I got myself a plant book and started to ID every plant I could. And I lived at the time in Seattle, and I just ID'd everything. And this was like good 2 years of IDing plants. And then I was like, there's a Master Gardener program. And so I decided to take that. And for some of you, you may know me from the weed identification walks that I've done. I did them for nearly 10 years before COVID hit. And so from then I've done a lot of permaculture design classes, horticulture classes. I worked at a nursery and garden here in town at Down to Earth. I was a garden coach, and then I decided to go back to school for landscape architecture, which I have my master's and bachelor's in. Since then, I've worked at a firm here in town, and now I work for a landscape architecture firm up in Portland, and I work here remotely. So I go up there a couple times a week. And the firm I work for is GreenWorks. We do a lot of park design and restoration work. So it's a really fun place to work. And I'm learning a lot more about restorative landscapes and beachfronts and all sorts of fun things. But I have this love for residential design because it's small. You can put in like a lot of great plants, and I've done a lot of them. So why I created this talk, it was for the U of O. So the U of O has a landscape architecture program there, and the students that come out of the program don't always know their plants, don't know how to place plants, don't know how to combine them. And so I was asked to do a gardening design or a planting design class. So this is it right now. And so this, my hope was to be able to educate students. And then I was like, well, this is perfect for homeowners too. And a lot of you are master gardeners and some of you are budding gardeners. And this, hopefully this talk will give you a little bit of insight on how people who design gardens take the steps in doing that. And so some of you may already know this, and some of you will be brand new to this. So hopefully you will all learn a little bit from today. Okay, so I am going to switch now to, let's see, I'm going to share my screen and we are going to switch to the planting design talk. And I'm going to make it full screen. So hopefully all of you can see that. So this talk is about understanding, and then we're going to learn to create and apply these ideas about planting design. So I put my glasses on because I have a little bit of thing I want to read so I don't forget anything. So this was a picture I took in Europe when I traveled there maybe 4 or 5 years ago. We traveled a lot around different gardens, and this was just a really beautiful combination I saw. So when we see a garden design, we may be like, oh, I love those colors. I love that plant. And, you know, the paving is great. And then you want to take what you see from these landscape designs and bring them home and put them into your own garden. So how do we do that when we see these beautiful textures and different, you know, stonework and all these different things? How does somebody create a design like this and make it so cohesive? Do they go to school for it? Is it a natural talent? What is it that they have that will, you know, be able to help them design these? So what we're going to do right now is we're going to talk from the ground up, and we're going to talk about different things that I feel like you need to understand first before we start to talk about the plants themselves. So with the environment, so there are 4 things that support plant life, which are sunlight, water, nutrients, and oxygen. And right here we have temperature. So in Eugene, Oregon, this is our temperature here. We're in the USDA, it's an 8A. And it's created by finding an average low of temperatures in the area. There are 11 zones altogether, and each zone is grouped by a similar low temperature. Portland, Oregon, and Austin, Texas are actually the same zone, which is kind of crazy. It's good to fall back on, but doesn't always provide a full picture. So you can usually see these on the back of a seed catalog or a seed packet when you buy one. But there's also the zone 6, which is a sunset zone. These are separated into microclimates, so they're smaller areas. It's not like the whole state or the whole area. They're separated down. There's 24 different zones throughout the 13 Western states. They take into account low temperatures, summer highs, lengths of growing season, humidity, mountain valley fluctuations, and rainfall for a more accurate result. And there's more detailed and specific. They're more detailed and specific to that area. And what we need right now is rain to help with all those fires. But in Eugene, Oregon, we get about 46 inches of rain per year. So this is kind of just shows you how much rain we get in this area, which is quite a bit. When I was teaching a gardening class to, I think they were grade 2s at Waldorf class, I was asking the kids how much it rains per year. And some of them were like, oh, 10 feet or, you know, like 2 inches and whatever. And I took out my measuring tape and I measured out what 46 inches was. And it was actually the height of one of the girls there. So it was really cool for them to see, wow, that's how much it actually rains in Eugene here. Not this time of the year, but most of the year it rains. Then here is our soils triangle. So some of you may know this, and some of you, it may be new to you. So soil is made up of 3 different components, which are sand, silt, and clay. Sand is the biggest particle, lots of space in between, like as if you were at a beach and you see the water draining and it goes really fast. Water nutrients flow super fast through this. and oxygen, there's a lot of oxygen filtration. Clay is the smallest particle and it's close knit. So that's the one where you could squeeze it on the soil and make a worm out of it. It holds water, it's dense, it cracks, and the roots can't move very well. I know when I was traveling in India, when we would walk on the paths after the monsoon would come, it would dry all up and it would have these massive cracks all over it. And you had to be really careful because the snakes would hide in there, and lots of cracks. That was very clay. And then there's the silt, which is it's a medium particle. It's very slippery feeling. It's along stream beds. It contains a lot of nutrients. And on this triangle here, you'll see, I'm not going to go into how to read it, like you actually follow these lines up. There's no lines on this one, but you're supposed to follow it here. And then for clay, you follow it along here, and silt. And the ideal is this loam right here that we all love. So there's also something called engineered soil, which is something that I work with a lot. Engineered meaning it's built, it's basically created. So you get a delivery from Rexius or a soil company, and they have created, there's different types of soil. You can get a sandy soil, or you can get a fast draining or stormwater soil or whatever. So there's different types of soil. But basically what you want for planting is like a loamy soil, nice and light. It has a mixture of all of them in it. Engineered soil. Here it says 40, 40, 20. I've seen it in different numbers and different percentages. And then, of course, all of you, or some of you being master gardeners, you'll know amending the soil with compost, leaves, manure creates a super healthy start for your plants. And even if you already have a garden bed, putting mulch on it every year, 4 inches, 6 inches, or whatever you have to put on it, those leaf mulches, that's really going to give your plants a good start for growing. So sun and shade. So when you go to the plant nursery, you're going to be looking at plant tags, and they're going to say, oh, this is a sun plant, this is a shade plant. But it takes a little bit of work to think about your garden itself and how, how that works and what side of the house is it on. And some people like myself, like when I first started, I'm like, oh, this will grow great here. And I grew corn at tried to grow corn in September when I first started gardening. And I put it on like a shady part of my house. Like I wasn't reading the details. So if you want your plants to thrive, you have to look at what microclimate is in your house. So I figured this is a good example. The yin yang sign, very Eugene, right? Like there's a lot of grown up hippies here. And so we've got the yin yang. Now, if we put up a house here, what do we have? We have a house that's, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but so north being here, south being here, down here. The sun rises here, it goes to this side. So if we're thinking about shade, this north side here and the northeast is a very cool area. It's shady and cool. When the sun is setting, it's the hottest part of the house. Now, a lot of you probably know this, especially if you've lived in your house for a long time and kind of, what plants work where and what plants totally die. So a lot of times you'll be like, oh, no, nothing grows on that side of the house. Well, you just might not have the right plant for that area. And there are some real plants that love the heat. Okay, now we're going to talk about plant shapes. So when you buy a shrub at the nursery or you have a shrub, plants come in all different shapes. There are round, oval, pyramidal, spiky, columnar, spreading, mounding, irregular. So sometimes it will say on the plant tag what shape that plant will be. And if you're kind of looking at like what you want to put in your garden, you may want to see, do you want to have something that's a little spikier here, or do you want to have a columnar because you have a big blank space on the side of the house that needs some verticality? So thinking about that. And then here are some examples of all of those. And you can Google and say, I want a spiky plant, or I want something that is a spreading plant. And you can find out options, like Oregon spreading plant or something. And then you're going to get a ton of them, and you might want to add flowering in there or whatever. So here are some of those options. And then the same with trees. So we've got the pyramidal tree, the round, columnar, weeping, oval, broad, vase, shrubby, and layered. So it's really important when you put a tree in, trees last for a very long time. You've got to be conscious of what's above the tree. Do you have power lines? Do you need a really tiny tree? Would, you know, a dwarf tree or something that only reaches 20 feet? Do you have a lot of space? Do you want a tree that's like more of a diva tree, like a layered tree, for instance? Do you want to have something that flowers? So there's all these different kinds of things that come with trees and shapes of trees. So finding the right tree for the right place is super important, way more than a shrub, because trees will probably outlive us. A lot of trees will. And, you know, thinking about shade and like what you're going to do to your neighbor's garden in 20 years from now. They may not be living there, so it's not a big deal. But do you really want to have a sequoia in your backyard like I did? We had a massive one planted about 15 feet away from our house, and we had nothing but shade there. And it was probably, I don't know, 80 feet tall. And somebody planted it with lots of love, you know, years ago, and it grew into a big tree. So think about the size of the tree and the shape of the tree when you're going to plant it. And that will be very helpful. Okay, so seasonal interest. So when we think about shrubs, we want shrubs to work for us. We don't want them just to be like, okay, I'm going to get this green shrub and we're going to stick it here. So they're basically the workhorses of the garden. They are going to give you, do you want to have a plant that's just green? Or do you want to have a plant that's like an all-season plant? Do you want to have a plant that's going to show up in the wintertime where everything else has lost its leaves? So here are some examples of just what things can do for you. And so the shrubs here, I'm showing their berries. So, you know, shrubs do have berries, but they attract birds. They're great for that. They also just give off like, you know, people walk by and like, oh my gosh, what is that? It's beautiful. So there's this attraction to that as well. There's loads of grasses, and grasses can have that green in the green or even blue, like this blue oak grass. They'll start out green, you know, a lot of times, or blue in the and then in the fall they'll change color, and they've got their seed heads, and they're just beautiful accents in the garden. Then we also have flowers. I mean, it's way, you know, a lot of the plants or shrubs will have flowers. So thinking about that as you're picking your plant. Foliage can be stunning, like this burning bush at the top left here. This is amazing if you have this plant already. And during the year, it's not a whole lot, but in the wintertime, it is that color, and it's stunning. And it's a surprise to some people too when we put them in. Twigs and bark. So when all the leaves have fallen off, this is what you're left with. And you're going to get a lot more interest from those. Plus, you can cut some of those back, and not the trees, but the shrubs, the twigs, and bring them inside during the wintertime, like this red twig dogwood on the left. And then we also have the evergreens, which are going to keep the structure throughout the year. So there's deciduous, which will lose their leaves. And then we've got the evergreens, which will have their leaves all year round. They're going to keep that structure. So we want a nice balance between the two. We don't want to have all deciduous or all evergreen. We want to mix and match. So here are the trees, and I'm just going to show you a cute little picture of some of them. So there's loads of things with trees, with the habitat, of course, with fruit, evergreens, color, seeds, nuts and berries, bark, flowers, and color. So you know, we love fruit, right? So and we can grow a lot of good fruit here in the Willamette Valley and in Oregon. So, but choose it wisely. Again, do you want to have a lot of wasps around? You got to be careful of like where you're going to plant your trees. If the fruit falls, do you want to, are you going to be picking it often? Do you want to get a tree that's grafted with several different kinds of the same, you know, different kinds of apples on it? So thinking about how you can have that tree work for you, and thinking about It's going to be there for a long time. So, you know, if you're going to be putting a tree up, a big tree, and you've got a lot of leaf litter in the fall, make sure maybe it doesn't have, it's not sappy at the type of tree that would attract aphids and the aphid stuff, the sticky stuff. What is it? I can't remember right now. But anyways, you know what I mean. So, or some of you do. So think wisely about that. But fruit is definitely a reason to be putting trees in, or any kind of flowering, because we can get lots of them. Okay, and then with flowers. So thinking about some trees, like the dogwood is always beautiful, and the magnolias, tulip trees, you know, just thinking about what else can that tree provide for you at your house when you're picking it out. Don't just pick it out for one reason. Think about more reasons you can pick it out for. And then bark. Oh my gosh, tree bark can be incredible. So take that into consideration as well. The foliage, of course, like who doesn't see a row of red maples, or to the right, this autumn ash. Unfortunately, the ashes have the ash borer, so I don't know how well they're going to do anymore, but there's a lot of other trees. And, you know, as kids, I have an older daughter now, but we used to go and pick leaves from trees and, you know, walk through them, and we would press the leaves, or we bring them in for fall. I mean, it was just so beautiful. And then again, evergreens don't have to only be green. They can be different colors. So think about that as well. And then habitat. You're designing for yourself, but you're also designing for others. So whether it's your neighbor, you want to screen them out, or you're designing, you know, one tree that has a nut in it that this particular bird loves. So think about that. They're all going to be there, especially the squirrels. Okay, so now we're going to talk about texture. So we're talking more about the visual texture of plants, not the actual feel of a leaf. And for novice designers, they will use color to contrast. They're not so much using this texture leaf. So there's a big, you know, there's a big difference in, like, it's like a step up, kind of like, oh, like, let's think about that next. So there's coarse, medium, and fine. And a good balance between the two is like a third fine and 2/3 coarse or bold. When a coarse texture is next to a fine texture, it creates a contrast. So it's like a pop. And then you can create these layers of interest. So this is a fine texture, like a lot of grasses or lavenders or barberry, the way that, you know, or the mahonia there with the fine textures. So think about that. Even the plant on the right, the, oh, it starts with a T, I'm just forgetting it. Anyways, for that plant, I'm sure you're all like, I know what it is. So you know this. And so those tiny leaves, that would be considered a fine texture as well. A medium texture. So a plant that's not giant, but a smaller one with these medium-sized leaves, a step up from the finer texture. And then we've got the coarse, the bold, the ones that like just in your face kind of thing. Like Gunnera, you've seen that in the right place. It looks fabulous. But I've seen it planted all sorts of places. So there are places where that giant leaf, like it's as big as a person or bigger, probably twice the size of me. Anyways, so now we're going to talk about the plant text, more about plant texture. So here we have, these are different mixtures together. And as you can see, as you kind of like look through them, you'll see fine texture, coarse, medium, and notice how it helps other ones pop out a little bit more. Like on the top right, we've got the fine texture of the maple. We've got the larger coarse leaves here. We have coarse large leaves here as well, not as big. But then, you know, it just goes through the whole thing. Even this fine texture back here is looking wonderful. So each one of those helps. So that's the next layer we want to talk about, not just color and shape, but we want to talk about how we can make those leaves pop out. So color. So some of you are artists and know the color wheel really well. Some of you may have last seen this in elementary school or high school, middle school. And some of you work, all the time with color wheels. But just thinking about color in the garden, when you're designing, people have a like or a dislike to certain color plants. So in my experience, sometimes if I work on a residential, they're like, oh, I love red plants, so red flowering plants. So we'll work with a lot of those, but we want to integrate other colors. Some people say, I don't like purple. A lot of times I'll work on, or I have worked on family housing for affordable housing. And so we don't really think about preference because people are coming and going, but when you work on a residential, you really want to think about what that person is liking. So think about the colors you love. This could also mean like flowers, berries, leaves, twigs, barks, because all of that have color, and different ones pop and recede. So oranges and reds are tropical, and blues and greens are more rustic. Like when we look at the color wheel a little bit more, on the left are the primary colors. So those are the ones that are kind of opposite. Those are the, the yellow, blue, and red. And then in between those colors, we're getting secondary colors. So that's the green, orange, and purple. And tertiary colors are the two name colors. So it's like a blue-green or a yellow-orange, or, things like that. So think about color when you're also designing. And then we have complementary colors and adjacent colors. So complementary colors are opposite. So we're going to take red and we're going to go to green. And then we might take an orange and then we're going to go to blue. And then adjacent colors are the two together, adjacent to each other. So the orange, yellow, orange. So the things that are kind of, orange and yellow. So they would kind of be next door neighbors. They blend really well, where if you're wanting something to pop out more, you might use a red and a green. So here we are with complementary colors. On the left-hand side, we have the purple and yellow. So the Hakonaklo grass and the heuchera, and they're both opposite. Like, look at the color pop in that one. And then on the right, we're going to have some of the cannas, some of the daisies, and they're all in the same color. So they kind of blend in together. There's really no pop there. So with combining, so we're using, when we do combining, we're looking at using color and texture together. So just so you know, if any of you don't know about this website, it's called eGarden Go. It's on the bottom there. And Darcy Daniels, I believe is her name. She does a great job of putting these plant combos together, and she tells you the names of them. So I've been looking at her stuff for years. I went to the Flower and Garden Show up in Portland, and there was, she gave a talk there. So I sat there, and then I think that was when I first found out about her website, but great information. She does videos now and blogs and all sorts of things. So go visit there. And so this is from her website. So here we're seeing contrasting foliage, as well as 3 seasons of interest. So you're going to want to have those, the flowers turning colors and the fine texture of, I'm not sure what shrub that is, but it's going to be an evergreen. And we've got the grasses. So we've got a lot of different plants changing color and different seasonal interest. Here again, some more ideas about what fine, coarse, and medium textures are, as well as we're also integrating things like the texture of the bark or the color of the bark. And then also the colors together. These are tertiary colors like a yellow greens. And then more ideas. So this website is full of these ideas. So if you really love any of these, you can just go right there. So this would be one for sun. It's got contrasting foliage, drought tolerant, fall color, winter interest, and warm colors. And here again, some more ideas of like how you can create a landscape that has all those layers of course and color and, just seasonal interest. I did a lot of these because I think they're great to look at. So here's a neat idea. So this one is for sun. And it has all of these. You've got the bark, the fine texture for the grasses, the medium texture for the evergreen, and the evergreen flower, evergreen and flowers. So what would happen if you wanted this for shade? Well, guess what? This is for shade. And so it's the same colors, but different plants. So yes, you can grow grasses in the shade. So I'm just going to go back to the sun so you can see those same colors. And then I'll go back to the shade again. So there are options for you. You don't, if you see a plant at your friend's house and you really want that, but you only have shade, think about like, okay, well, it's a grass plant, it's got yellow foliage, it's clumping, and it blah, blah, blah. And then go to the nursery and tell them you're looking for something in shade, or do your own research and find something. So now we're taking the environment, the shapes, the seasonal, the textures, colors, and combinations. Now we're going to look at plant palettes. So, so for plant palettes, that's what I do a lot of the time. Right now, I'm not so much working on any residential designs because GreenWorks doesn't do that, but I, in the past I have. So a plant palette is basically sitting down with a piece of paper and going trees, shrubs, and ground cover. And I write out lists of what I want and for shade or sun or partial shade. And it's lots of fun. It's one of my favorite things to do. So this, at my office, this is one of the, or this is my old office. This is what a plant palette may look like for a residential design. Let's see. This actually might be slightly bigger than a residential design, but it has a plant schedule at the top. You'll see up here, it says these are the trees here. And then these are the shrubs. These are the ground covers. And then over here, we have a rain garden. At some point, I hope to do a talk on rain gardens here in Eugene. Anything over 1,000 square feet of impervious surface that you put in, it's mandatory by code that you need to put in a rain garden. And so at this place here, we had to create a rain garden. And so these are the plants off the city code and all that. So we had to do that. This is another option for doing a plant palette, and this is prettier, but it also takes a lot of time. This may be something that you could do for your own home garden, or for if you were starting to do design work for somebody, and have a plant palette. And sometimes we're thinking about, like this one here is like, it talks about it over here. The front yard is a bird garden and pollinator rain garden, and you need a screen from your neighbors. Backyard is a deer resistant, and then shoreline. So they live on the shore. So thinking about what you need, like, do you have neighbors with a screen, that you want to screen, or do you have an area where you want shade, so you want to put a tree there? Do you want to have a pollinator garden? So there's all these different layers. You could now start taking what we've just talked about and compiling these lists. Sometimes these lists are already pre-made online, like you can find like a rain garden list or a pollinator list, but they're not always specific to this area. And if you have deer, that throws a whole other thing into it. So a lot of us have deer here. So thinking about that. Here's another plant list that somebody created. This is really lovely. This would be something that if I was going to be doing a presentation for a resident and they wanted to see the pictures, then I would show them this. And then, of course, another planting plan, right? This is the planting plan here, and then it tells you what each plant is in this garden, which I love because it really helps you when you're wandering around a garden. How do you know what that plant is if you want to plant it at home? And then this is a native plant for pollinators, and looks like they have medium soils and wet soils. So let's talk about placing plants. So a rule of thumb around a building. So this is a house here. So we don't want to plant plants right up against the building. We want to give it some space because it's going to be right against it. It's going to cause moisture, possible damage to the house. So, you know, when you're planting a plant that's going to get ginormous, you got to pull it out from the house. So you want to come out, 2 or 3 feet, depending on the size of the shrub that's going to be there. And now what we're going to do is we're looking at how we could place plants in this area here. So let's look back at the house here. You know, you don't want to plant tall shrubs in front of a window. There's areas here where there's blank walls, so it's okay to go a little bit higher. And then here are some plants that, you know, I just stuck in there to show an idea. So one of the things that can happen when you're doing landscape design, and when I'm teaching people in the office about landscape design, is that you never want to plant a plant against a window up high. You don't want it to have a grow 8 feet tall. And you also want to plant downwards. So you don't want to have, especially when you're right near, you know, the side of a house, you want to plant the taller shrubs in the back, medium-sized shrubs here, and then the lower shrubs here. Now, this garden could go out a ways, and so you're going to want to have taller shrubs in different places, but at least against the house, you're going to want to have it tiered down, or if you're going to a walkway, you don't want to have a giant shrub right on your walkway, or you could, especially if you could get under plantings and it grows up a little bit so you can plant underneath of it. But you don't want to box things in. And so doing that will give you a little bit more of an expansion feeling. Okay, so plant sizes and plant shapes, spacing and shapes. So when a plant set, when you buy the tag, get the tag, it says this plant will grow to 4 feet. So in the top left here, this circle here shows a plant at full size. So here, you might buy it and it's this little tiny gallon plant, but in 3 years from now, it's going to be this big. So when somebody says on center, you're going to take your plant and from here to here, it's 4 feet. So we know that this shrub is probably going to get to about 4 feet. And it describes the distance from the center of the plant. Sometimes people plant them really far apart, like a 2-foot plant that's going to get 2 feet, they'll plant them like 4 feet apart. And then you're going to have all that space there. So that's open to the sunlight, which is open to moisture, which is then open to weeds. And if you plant them on center, and especially I didn't put it on here, but triangulate them, then it's going to show, then it's going to cover the ground, which is what we want. We don't want to have a lot of open space because it is a style of gardening, but it also is higher maintenance. And then hatch patterns, typically I show them in hatches like this. And the same with trees, we do 30 feet on center. You always want to make sure you're planting your trees far enough apart, depending on the size of them, so they have room, ample room to grow. So then there's also the individual or massive plant, massings. Individual plants are when you place them like this, and then massings are when you place like this. You put them together. So that would be like at the bottom, the massings would be like 4 foot on center or 2 foot on center. So when you see individual plants planted all over the place in little speckles, you know, you've got one plant here, one plant here, one plant here, one plant here of the same kind, and you do the same all over the place, it gets really busy. So with landscape design or landscape architecture, we typically do massings of plantings. So we're going to have some here, clump here, clump here, clump here, clump here, like that. And that is going to help your eye move from place to place. And there's enough of a massing for you to understand and move through that landscape. And it's very cohesive. Where above in this individual, this is also a style of gardening and there's nothing wrong with it. But when you're trying to create more of a full landscape that keeps traveling and your eye is able in a relaxed state, this is kind of more of the massings is what we do. So here's a home garden, and you can see they've massed these Haconoclo grasses here, some ferns, the Ophiopogon grasses here. So this is an example of a small garden where they do this. So this is one of my favorite designers of all time, Piet Oudolf. And he is, if you don't know about him, you should look him up, especially if you like large, beautiful gardens that look natural, kind of natural, but man-made natural. But they are just amazing. And there's a picture of one coming up, so I will show it to you. So what they do is they create these, they will pick the area out, and then they will spray paint the areas of where each plant will go. And then they start to put them in their masses. and they put them in there. And then this is what it looks like afterwards. So it doesn't look totally natural because there's so many different ones. But as you can see right here, there's this plant here. It's repeated down here again. It's probably repeated in the down the corner. So it's like you're walking through this and your eye knows what to expect as you're going through this. So now, after this talk, which I just finished, we are going to look again at these landscapes. So can you tell any of those things that we just talked about, maybe the massings, maybe the texture or the color or the flowers, and see what you see in these? You'll have more of a critical eye now that you understand what it is you're looking for. And hopefully you can then repeat this again in your garden or when you're making these planting designs for your friends or, for whoever, and take all those things into consideration. These are some really beautiful plantings. Mosaic Gardens they have some really nice designs. So I have at least one, maybe two project examples. This is a residence up in the South Eugene Hills that I did like maybe 4 years ago. I worked with one of the owners there. And so when we go out, we do, we'll have a survey of a plant, we get the land surveyed, or sometimes it's available. These big circles show the existing trees. And then the house is in here. It's a little hard to see with these lines. We'll go out and we measure. So all these red lines here are my handwriting. And then I put those onto a CAD file, a computer-aided drafting file. And did it skip? Okay, we're good. And then here it is here. So I put all those measurements on, and then I start showing what's existing. Let's see, is this the existing? Yeah, this is the existing conditions. There's the house here, their patio, and their big lawn. And they just had a lot going on. Like they had little kids and they just had a big space, and they needed to have it more of a usable space that they wanted to spend more time at in. So then we started to redline this and design and see how we could create it more of what they wanted for their family. And then I drew in, it's really hard to see. I'm sorry, these lines are a little bit challenging, but we created this nice curving lawn, created a meadow so they didn't have to like maintain that and mow it. And then hopefully you can see this a little bit better. So as landscape designers and landscape architects, we are taught to learn, we are taught to see in plan view. So this is plan view. So this is basically looking down at it. So it's a little difficult for some people to understand it, but hopefully you can get the idea. We put in a pond with a little waterfall, a retaining wall, or sorry, not a retaining wall. This is the dry creek bed that would take the water from the hillside. And then this was my plant list, not very fancy, right? So we had full sun. We had, we needed to have drought tolerant. We were going to have some irrigation, but not everywhere. They had a lot of deer and they had children. They also had dogs. And I wanted to have that contrasting foliage and fall color. So this was my list of plants for them. And then I started on the left placing plants. So I had a piece of trace paper, and I put it over top of the drawing, and I start drawing clumps of plants. Not so much circles, sometimes circles, but not always. And then I refined it and I drafted it in the middle one. And then we started to make some tweaks with it, changing some things, making it a little bit more organic, repeating plants. And then the final changes were here in this drawing. And I colored them in. I don't know if it was for the client or if it was doing for this class, but it did. It helps people understand. And like the colors were repeated, which meant the same plant was that same color. So that really helps. And then that was the final design there. for the client. And unfortunately, they did not, they did all the landscape, they got all this done, but then they were waiting and I never went back. So they had a contractor come in and install a plant. So I never ended up going back, but they did a lot of the groundwork for this phase. So we have 15 minutes. I think I can talk a little bit longer. Have a couple more projects to show you. So a lot of you may be familiar with sponsors. It's out on Highway 99 and a wonderful program, and it helps to take inmates and get them back into a life again where they've got a job. And there's a lot of, there's not probably a ton of funding. My father-in-law helped establish it a long time ago, so it's always been very dear to my heart. So when I saw this, I was like, yes, I want to work on this project. It's super cool. So this was the existing property, and they were building some tiny homes here. And this is, so the reason I'm doing all this kind of stuff is because it was, this is for the U of O students. And so for them to like be exposed to these kinds of things, and maybe for some of you, this might be interesting. This is called a landscape takeoff. So this is finding out how much property you have on your land, so you can figure out by square footage how much it's going to cost to design your garden. Here is the cost estimate that we did for it. And here is the planting design that I ended up doing for this. Here again is that plant schedule. And there's the rain garden. And they had the little tiny homes. I could color that in right there, but we have, oh yes. And then these are called details. This is basically, if you're all familiar with cakes. So when you cut a piece of cake, you see the layers of the cake and the frosting and the cake and the frosting, and then sometimes decorations on top. This is exactly the same. This is like you take where the tree's planted and you cut right through the soil and you see all the insides of how many inches of soil you need, what the subgrade underneath the soil is like, how much rock you need. So these are called details. This is how it's built by a contractor. And an irrigation plan. And then this is what it looked like after. So beautiful. So the nice long rain garden down here, and their garden beds, and all the houses had plants around them. And this is what the buildings look like themselves. Of course, this was done by an architect. So architects are not as familiar with plants. So their main focus is the building. That's why they hire landscape architects. And so their planting is not what actually went in. They will show a beautiful building and some plants, but it's not what really went in. So for resources, here's some, this is also recorded, so you can come back to this, but eGarden Go is a great place to look at, well, I wrote it right there, planting plans, plant combinations, great local information. The woman who does it is in Portland, so that's a great place. And then Portland Nursery, Monrovia, and Great Plant Picks online are some of my favorite places I would go to get information about plants in this area. And then of course the Master Gardeners here, and the OSU Landscape Plants Database. So those are all awesome websites. You just got to be careful when you are looking at you know, a plant palette online or researching plants, because sometimes it's not in your area, and then you won't you know, they're going to show you this awesome plant and you're like, yes, I'm going to go get it. And you're like, oh, wait, it grows in California, in Southern California. You're like, but there's a lot of times that there are plants that are available here that are similar. So just like that sun and shade picture I showed you of the different plant combinations, you can get things like that as well. That, you know, sunshade, different plants, but they in different colors, but they will suit this different situations. So I do have more pictures, but I think that maybe it's 10:02. Jan, do you think if there's any questions or anything, or should I talk about one more project? I don't know.
There's a couple of questions if you want to take questions.
Sure, I can take questions.
So one question, current fire-wise restrictions recommend that plants be at least 5 feet away from a home, I think, and trees even further away. How does that affect a design? And is it possible to have a great design with only fire-resistant plants?
Oh, of course. Yeah, good question, especially as we are all experiencing right now, and I'm watching ash fall from the sky. Yes, whatever requirements they're saying, if it's 5 feet away from a house, is one thing you have to think about, is that once it's fully grown, is it 5 feet, or is it the center of the shrub? I'm guessing 5 feet from the house as fully grown. So make sure when you place that plant that you take into consideration how big it will get, and then trimming. So that would be a shrub. So there could be a couple options that you might be able to do. One is sometimes people put a nice decorative border of like river rock around the house, smaller rock. It could be 1 or 2 or even 3 feet wide, which would take up a little bit of that gap. Sometimes people will use mulch, and I'm not sure with mulching in an area where there could possibly be fire. I don't know how that works. But I would definitely, if our place was within that fire area, I would definitely follow those rules. I'm not familiar with them because I haven't done any designs like that yet, right against houses. But of course you can still have a beautiful design because you're going to be far enough away from the house, and then your design will work downwards from that to your path or to your garage or to wherever, just maintaining that border. I was also thinking of another idea, which I can't remember at the moment. You may also want to think about what kind of trees you plant, and are there ones that are better than others? Are there ones that create a lot of sap, which will catch on fire? So some evergreens will do that. And thinking about seeing if there's lists of plants, a list of trees that will do that. I wouldn't have a tree too close to the house, because if it branched over the house or close, and if it caught on fire for some reason, could it then catch the roof on fire? So thinking about that, and but you could definitely have a beautiful design. You would just have to make sure you're within the parameters, what they're suggesting. Hope that's helpful.
Thank you. How do you plan and plant for bloom time foliage sequencing? Do you have a good resource for that?
I don't actually. I don't know. Maybe the Master Gardeners has one. But what I would do is I would, on one of those diagrams, let me see if I can. Well, I'll just tell you, there was a diagram that showed like month, January, February, March, April, May, like that. I would create a table with the months, and because on your actual plant thing, it's going to say on your plant tag, or if you do research, it'll say it blooms from June to September. That's a long bloomer. So then I would draw that line there, and I would go to my next plant and keep doing that and see if I could get something that overlapped. I don't have anything like that. A lot of the plants we use bloom in the summertime, but I try to put like hellebores or daphnes in, things that will bloom in the winter as well, or rhododendrons, like earlier blooms. If you're trying to design with new plants, you've got those tags which will tell you when it blooms, and there may be some good online resources. I would check eGarden Go, that top one there, to see if she has any plants or any lists of plants bloom times, especially for this area. That would be helpful.
Okay. Another question. I'm not seeing very many native plants. Do you use many native plants in your design?
Yes, that's a good question. So I use a lot of native plants specifically in my new job. In my last job, we did residential designs, and we always work with the homeowner of what they want, but we will use like California wax myrtle. I know that arbutus, we use some arbutus that are native, and like mahonia, different plants like that. definitely use natives, but a lot of times they're kind of in the background because they hold that structure. Deer aren't going to eat them. But there's a, like, you know, I'm doing a design right now in Hood River for 40 stormwater facilities. It's like a giant project, and I'm using only natives. So for GreenWorks, where I work, we use a lot of native plants. Some residentials, they don't want to have them. It's their preference. That's what I was mostly showing on these drawings. So it really depends on what style of gardening you like. Some people want to have that bright color, the popping color like that. Some people want to have the native plants where they're kind of all growing, you know, like when I think of natives, I don't think of pop of color and this and that. I think more of like things are blending together. It can be a little messier, but also you're attracting a lot of habitat with those plants. So there's a give and take. But definitely I would encourage people to use natives, especially as our climate's changing. Even if it's not the whole thing, you can put like 5 native plants in there that are going to be great and hold, you know, do well, even if you're not sure if the other 5 aren't going to do that well.
Okay, we'll take up one more question here. I see lawn in some of your photos. What do you recommend for a lawn look green and function, walk and play on without too much watering needed?
Yeah, there's some great mixes out there that are like a low mow mix, which I love. There's the different kinds of eco lawn mixes. You would have to look online for the different kinds. I think we would order them through like manufacturers, so they're not available to residents, but like down to earth, they're going to have, is it Fleur de Lawn? And I'm sure there's a lot more companies now that make different kinds, which are going to have the yarrow in them and the clover and maybe some of the little daisies in them. The no mow lawns are really cool because they, like, you do need to mow them sometimes, like maybe once a year, but they get about, you know, 6 to 8 inches high, and they kind of just flop over and they do their thing, and you don't really have to mow them, and they're beautiful. I'm all for eco lawns. I love them, but you also have to be concerned about bees. I mean, bees are wonderful, but if somebody's allergic to them, then you have to be concerned, because that could be life-threatening for some people. Like my mom's allergic to wasps, so I have to be really careful when we go to a park of where we sit. But yeah, so I don't have a recommendation myself, but I would check out things like Down to Earth or different companies in town here if they have, well, probably online recommendations of, you know, different kinds of lawns for this area.
Okay. Is it easy for you to go back to the seasonal interest flowering tree slide? Somebody wanted to know what the tree in the middle of the second row was.
Can you all close your eyes while I go through this really fast? Because it's gonna, for some people, it'll be too much. Okay, we're almost there. Okay, so was it seasonal interest trees?
Yeah.
This one here, yes, it looks like a Hinoki. I don't know if I'm right. Hinoki cypress. It has the same kind of leaf texture, but it looks different than a Hinoki cypress, and I don't know what it is. I'm sorry. I thought, oh, I could tell you what it is, but when it comes to evergreens, I'm not always that sharp when it comes to those plants.
Okay, that's all the time we have right now. So if you have a question that did not get answered,